to awaken him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate our lives ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Let's pray together. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
dearest friend,
dearest friend,
beloved God,
beloved God,
great Master,
great Master,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
great saints of all religions,
great saints of all religions,
we bow before you all.
we bow before you all.
Be with us.
Be with us.
Show us the way
Show us the way
to greater happiness,
to greater happiness,
enlightenment,
enlightenment,
and joy in thee.
and joy in thee.
And as we receive thee,
And as we receive thee,
help us to share with all.
help us to share with all.
Oh,
Peace. Amen.
Thank you, friends. Please be seated. We'll start with a little music. From the depths of slumber, as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper. The food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from thee, I will taste thee and mentally say, where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be gone. Boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God. With threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I embark. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, my joy comes singing evermore. meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any.
Let's continue to meditate as we listen to these words from Affirmations for Self-Healing on our quality this week. Love. One finds love not by being loved, but by loving. We can never know love if we try to draw others to ourselves, nor can we find it by centering our love in them. For love is infinite. It is never ours to create. We can only channel it from its source in infinity to all whom we meet. The more we forget ourselves in giving to others, the better we can understand what love really is. And the more we love as channels for God's love, the more we can understand that His is the one love in all the universe. Let's affirm together as Yogananda Ji taught us, first out loud and then softer and softer until we do it mentally. I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And of the love I feel from God.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
I will love others as extensions of my own self.
And of the love I feel from God.
And of the love I feel from God.
Now in a whisper, I will love others as extensions of my own self. And of the love I feel from God. And now mentally, I will love others as extensions of my own self and of the love I feel from God. Now one more time mentally, broadcasting from the spiritual eye, the point between the eyebrows. I will love others as extensions of my own self and of the love I feel from God. Pray silently with me. O Infinite One, make me a channel for Thy love. Through me reach out to sow seeds of love in barren hearts everywhere. Oh, peace.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
It's great to see you. We haven't seen all of you since the New Year and holidays. So, for those who don't know us, I'm Narayan, and no, this is. Oh my God, this is not Dharma Devi. Dharma Devi's been pumping some iron. This is my dear friend Keshava, and I'm going to share from Rays of the One Light, which are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And this week's topic is, did God create the universe or become it? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, contains a passage that explains the essential truth that creation is a process of becoming. the universe is not separate from God, the Creator, but a part of Him, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments of our consciousness. God's is the life, God's the reality. Not a melody could be composed, not a poem written, were the melody and the poem not already there, simply waiting to be expressed. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of infinity. But the pristine impulse from the divine, undistorted by limitation and delusion, is the life that gives rise to all that is. As the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, I am the fluidity of water. I am the silver light of the moon and the golden light of the sun. I am the Om chanted in all the Vedas, the cosmic sound moving as if soundlessly through the ether. I am the manliness of men. I am the good, sweet smell of the moist earth. I am the luminescence of fire, the sustaining life of all living creatures. I am self-offering in those who would expand their little lives into cosmic life. O Arjuna, know me as the eternal seed of all creatures. In the perceptive, I am their perception. In the great, I am their greatness. In the glorious, it is I who am their glory. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Welcome again, friends. I'd like to begin with one of Yogananda's Whispers from Eternity. This is entitled, The Demand to See God's Love in All Human Love. So I invite you to pray along with me and make this sincere demand yourself. With the love of all human loves, I have come to love thee, thou God of all loves. Thou art the Father, anxious to protect his children. Thou art the little child, lisping love to its parents. Thou art the mother, showering infinite kindnesses on all her family. Thou dost show in the all-surrendering love of the lover for the beloved. Thou art the love of friends for one another. Purify me with the reverence of a servant to his master. Teach me to love thee with all pure loves, for thou art the fountain of love, both earthly and heavenly. Bathe me in the fountain spray of all loves. So, did God create the universe or become it? Well, it's a trick question. Yes. Is the answer. But it's, I think, a very inspiring idea that the act of creation is really truly an act of becoming. And Swami Kriyananda talks about this in numerous places and times. And it's a very inspiring thought, because so often we can think that we are limited by our form, by our circumstances, by our bodies, all these things. But really, we are that seed of the infinite, that because we are created from our one Father, we have that same creative potential that he does. And so this is why in the reading, Swami says, no poem could be written if it weren't already in the ether. No song could be sung were it not already there. And the reason why this is actually really beautiful to me is because it takes a lot of the pressure off us, doesn't it? We don't have to create this beautiful poem. We just have to attune ourselves to it and it'll be there. And Yogananda would demonstrate this. Someone asked him once, can inspiration come at will? And he said, absolutely, take down this poem. And on the spot wrote one of Whispers from Eternity. And the reason why I bring this up is because everything we need is already available to us. We just need to remember that it's there. We need to remember how to reach forth and bring it into our lives, how to become that which we need. You know, so often, at least in my life, there is a real battle that goes on inside of me between acceptance and rejection. And it really comes down to, am I going to accept everything that comes to me as a gift from Divine Mother, or am I going to reject and fight and defend myself from the slings and arrows of all of our misfortune, as Shakespeare would say? Well, I invite you to take the road of acceptance for one single purpose, because it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun. And I have a little example to illustrate this. I, about 6 weeks ago, led one of our 3-hour meditations at Ananda Largemont Center. And we had a beautiful meditation. I felt very inspired by this practice. And then on our way home, we're sitting there driving in the car, and I'm resting in the peace, and all of a sudden, whoop, whoop, there's some police lights that go off behind me. And you know, it's funny because I've been a law-abiding citizen my whole life. I'm a pretty upstanding guy. But you know, as soon as you see those lights behind your car, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I'm going in. Like, this is it. You know, must be all the memory of the past lives of being like a pirate or something. But, so there I am. And, you know, but seriously, the lights went off and my heart just panicked. It was like, what's wrong? Because I didn't know what could possibly be the reason for them pulling me over. So I tried my best to be calm, and I pulled over the car, and the police officer comes out. It turned out that my registration was out of date pretty grossly. But, so I had that one coming. But I was sitting there feeling, and I was amazed that in an instant I had lost my inner peace. In an instant, the moment I saw the lights in my rearview mirror, it was gone. And I was scrambling the whole encounter to try and, yes, get my registration and my driver's license and to try and be nice to the police officer. But more so, I was scrambling to try and reclaim my inner peace. And because I was in this fear that this was something outside of myself. And so finally, it worked out very miraculously. The police officer let me off the warning, and I went home. And it took me another about hour to really get back in my center and to find that place of peace again. And I thought, okay, well, thanks Divine Mother, thanks for the warning, I'll get it fixed. And the holiday season hit, and I didn't get it fixed. And I went through a couple of steps, but I didn't quite take it to completion. And this new year, I made a bit of a resolution that I was going to pray to Divine Mother more and try to feel Divine Mother in everything, and try to see her in my friends, and to feel her behind the words of the chants we sing, or to feel her behind the love of friendship, like was so beautifully said in this Whispers from Eternity. And so I was driving up to our Thousand Oaks Center about a week ago, actually, and I was chanting this chant, Thousands of Suns and Moons, which is a chant to Kali, Divine Mother, and I was chanting the whole way, and I got to drive along the PCH. There's a beautiful sunset, and I was admiring Divine Mother in all of her beauty, and chanting to her the whole time, and we had a beautiful satsang in this Thousand Oaks Center, and I got back in the car, and I kept chanting to Divine Mother as Kali. And a little tangent here, Kali is the Hindu goddess of death and destruction. And I love me some good death and destruction, because it's actually death and destruction of the ego first and foremost. But really she's a god of wisdom, and that's why we chant to her for wisdom. But one of the funny things, one of my friends said, like, you have to be careful chanting to Kali too much, because like you might start a forest fire if you're not careful. And because it's that purification, it's that fire of purification. So there I was chanting Divine Mother, and I was feeling her presence and really in a joyful place of self-offering. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, and I kid you not, probably 10 blocks away from my home, pulling off the freeway, and the lights light up behind me. Except for this time, I was prepared. And as soon as I saw the lights, I made the conscious decision, Divine Mother, this is just you coming back to play with me. And you know what? You caught me, because I didn't finish what you asked me to do in time, so you're coming back. maybe for a little bit more of a wrist slap. So I pulled the car over, and the police officer walks up, and I rolled down the window, and he's like, "So, do you know why I pulled you over?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's my registration. It's out of date." and so we did the game back and forth. I gave him my stuff. He went back to his car. But what was so different for me was I was trying to see Divine Mother in this police officer. I was trying to see her light, even in the flashing sirens behind me, and the lights behind me. And when the police officers went back and were writing me a fix-it ticket, I sat and I prayed for them. And I did Kriya Yoga, and I tried to ask Divine Mother to bless them through my practice of Kriya Yoga. And then they came back, they gave me the fix-it ticket, and I thanked them for it, and I said, "Thank you so much." But I said it sincerely, because I felt like it was Divine Mother giving me the lesson I needed. I accepted it, and I said, "Thank you," because clearly this was 5 months coming. So thanks for making me deal with it now. And I actually did think the police officer was a gentlemanly man. So I asked him, I said, "Well, actually, how can I commend you for your service tonight? I'd like to call one of your superior officers." And he kind of like looked at me with this shocked face, and he said, "Well, there's a number on the card if you want to call him." And I was like, "Great, well, how will I let him know it's you?" And he said, "Well, my badge number's on there." I said, "Okay, great." So I went home, and 2 days later, I actually followed through with this impetus, and I called the police office. And I asked a few questions, and then I asked to be put through to the police sergeant. And the police sergeant picks up the phone, and I just said, "Hey, I just wanted to call in and commend you for one of your officers' fine work." And he's like, "Oh, sure, what was do you have his name?" I said, "No, I have his badge number," and it went on like this. And I told him, "Oh, he pulled me over the other night, and I just thought he really handled himself very professionally. He was very calm. He made me feel safe, and I thought he did a wonderful job." And the sergeant said, "Well, did he give you a ticket?" And I said, yeah, he did. But he did a good job. And the sergeant was like aghast. I could just hear him on the other side of the line. "What?" And I told him, really, I was like, "No, I thought this man did a good job. I mean, really." And I said, "I know that it can be hard to try and toe that line of being professional but also kind, and I thought he did a nice job of it." And the police sergeant was really beside himself. He said he was going to write up a big review about this and really commend this officer for it. And he's like, "This will be a big morale boost for the whole office. Thank you so much." And I thought, that's great. I mean, all it's going to cost me is $25, and I might have made some officer's day. Anyway, the reason why I bring this up is because we're constantly confronted by these things. And I mean, it was such a poignant example for me because both times I was pulled over by, some stern police officers, but one time it became an opportunity for me to share Master, for me to share Divine Mother, for me to share blessing, and even literally to reach out and try and help him in his life in some way. And what a difference that made for me than when I had been pulled over the time before. I mean, just forgetting all the ideas of having done good for someone else. I mean, from a purely selfish point of view, it was far better a choice for me. Because the first time when I went home, it took me an hour to get my heart calm again. And mind you, this was after having just meditated for 3 hours. One would think I would be a little more even-keeled at this point, but it took me as it did. Finally, I got back to my sense of equilibrium. But when I got pulled over the second time, I felt even more joy driving home than I had a moment before. And I walked through the door and I saw Zoe. "Hi, honey, how are you? Did you have a nice evening?" She goes, "Oh, I was good. How about you?" I was like, "Oh, I had a great time. I got pulled over by a police officer." And it was such a completely different experience for me. But this is how we can approach everything in life. This can be how we approach every circumstance on the battlefield of life. That it can be a joy. It can be an opportunity to share Divine Mother, to share the Masters through us to everyone. Because God did not create the universe. He became it. And so within every police officer is Divine Mother. Within each of us is our Guru. Within all of our friendship is the love of God. And so if we can listen for that current of energy, for that current of divine love, not only will it accelerate our own spiritual progress, but it makes life so much more fun. Yogananda said, "Life with God is nothing but fun. Life without God is a nest of troubles." And it's so true. And I was inspired. I've been thinking a little bit more, contemplating on some of the lives of some great Christian and Catholic saints, and a story of St. Francis came to mind in this regard, and that I don't know much about St. Francis, so forgive me if I butcher this story, but apparently he was riding one day down a road in Italy, and he saw a leper walking down the street towards him. And leprosy is a terrifying disease where your skin rots while you're still living, and fingers and toes, and your flesh rots away. And what's interesting is actually, ironically, leprosy is not contagious. You can't transmit it to somebody through proximity. But they didn't know that in the Dark Ages. And so lepers were the outcasts because they thought at the time that lepers were like cursed by the devil. And so you didn't want to come near them, you didn't want to touch them, you didn't want to do anything with them. And so St. Francis saw this leper walking down the street, and he said that he had the immediate reaction to pull his horse away from the leper. But he caught that reaction. And he said he got off his horse and he tenderly kissed this leper on the lips with all the tender sweetness he had. And it revealed then that that leper was Christ, come to test his love. And we can think that, oh, how sweet that Christ came to him in the form of a leper, but Christ comes to us in the form of every human being that is. The Christ consciousness permeates all and everything. It's not their ability if they have it, it's our ability to perceive it in them. This is why Christ was able to say, "My Father and I are one," because he truly knew that his Father and he were and are one forever and ever. But I just love it that when the Pharisees pulled him before them and they said, "What is this heresy you speak, that you and your Father are one?" And you know what Christ said? "Do not your scriptures say that ye too are gods?" It's in all of us. And we need to remember that. We need to see that in everyone we come in contact with. And it's through this remembrance of the Christ consciousness within each of us that we can resurrect this divine love that is latent within our hearts. This is how Christ was able to say, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." That wasn't purely a sentiment. He knew they knew not what they do. And he was in them. He loved them because he was them. And so the more we can see, first, Divine Mother in everything, then eventually we'll be able to see ourselves in everything. And once we can see ourselves in everything, then we become everything. God bless you, my friends.